This is a Film Stories original podcast.
Love this podcast? Support this show through the Acast supporter feature. It's up to you how much you give, and there's no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description to support now.
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop Game Day Faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
A little self-care can go a long way, especially amidst the hustle and bustle of the holidays. That's where Vegamore comes in. Trusted by millions, Vegamore is all about giving your hair the love and care it deserves. With their vegan and cruelty-free formulas, you can nourish and revitalize your strands while indulging in some much-needed pampering. Because let's face it, who couldn't use a bit more me time this time of year? Go to vegamore.com/ACAST, code ACAST. That's vegamor.com/ACAST, code ACAST.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This is Writers on Film, the only podcast dedicated to books on cinema. Hello and welcome to Writers on Film. My name is John Bleasdale. I'm a writer and film critic, and today I'm going to be talking to Rachel Abramowitz and about her book, Is That a Gun in Your Pocket? Women and Power in Hollywood. It's a book that I came across quite recently, and it's a really excellent sort of panoramic view of the rise in power of a number of female directors, creatives, producers, up to studio executives and studio heads throughout really the 80s and 90s. It's a great read, and I thoroughly recommend it, as you can tell from my conversation with Rachel. If you enjoy the episode, please remember to like, subscribe, try to spread the word as far and wide as you can. Also to be noted, I have recently begun a Substack newsletter which you can subscribe to. It's called John Bleasdale Writes on Film, if you want to search for it, or I'll try to put a link in the show notes so that you can click on it. And that way you can get some essays which I'm going to write about books on film. I'm going to write about my own experience of writing on film, and just basically a space for me to explore some ideas which I don't particularly want to pitch, or editors don't particularly want to publish. So I'm not sure if that's the hard sell version of that, but hopefully you'll find something interesting. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Jonty, DRJONTY. Twitter seems to be around at least for another week, so please follow me there if you like. I'll see if I've tried Mastodon, and despite the unfortunate name, and there are other places which are popping up a little bit like mushrooms overnight, but I think it's probably the case that 6 months or a year we'll know what's going on, and we'll see if something has emerged from the ashes, some phoenix has emerged from the ashes. Great. Okay. So before you do all of those things, the Substack, the Twitter, the liking, the subscribing, you have to first listen to the conversation.
it's interesting. It was, yes, I feel like the book came out too early. You know what I mean? It was too ahead of its time. And it would have probably had a bigger reaction, bigger splash if it had come out now. I mean, I do meet a lot of women who are in the industry who just love the book. Like it's like a real touchstone for them, because there really wasn't, and there still isn't any kind of how-to guide. Not that there ever is a how-to guide, but it's very hard to imagine your life if you can't sort of imagine someone going before you and what they did. And it just gives a little context to how to move through the world.
Yeah. The pitfalls that others, fall into. And I mean, that's what really struck me about the book is you deal with so many different women, so many powerful women and women coming from different different areas, different walks of life, actresses and writers, directors, producers. And they all have such different stories. It's like, as you say, there's no one way of doing this.
Right. I mean, it's gotten, Hollywood's gotten much more streamlined, fancy college into the film business. So it's gotten more, it's more industrialized now, even more so. And now you're sort of dealing with the algorithm, whatever that is, and IP. It's like a whole, even in the years since the book came out, almost 20 years, it's really changed a lot. Also, there was no streaming when the book came out. And so the sort of kind of collapse of TV and film together, I think it is better for women in Hollywood, quite significantly better, but primarily in TV. But then again, a lot of film, except for the giant blockbusters and the indies, have sort of disappeared. So it's a different business.
Could you tell me a little bit about the sort of the origin of the idea of the book, how it came about as a project?
It was very, I worked for this movie magazine called Premiere Magazine, which was around for a long time. And then it's still online, but it collapsed, as many magazines did. But I was really, really young. I had just come out to Hollywood, and I sort of wanted this project where I could meet a lot of people. And I was always very interested in women's stories. I was a history major in college, but I focused on women's stories. And so I wanted this opportunity to meet everyone in town, and it started off as an article, and then it became sort of a special issue. And then after the issue, it was an oral history in this special issue. And then after that, I got approached by book agents. And then I took a long time to write it, a very long time to write it, because I sort of felt I changed it into an actually written book as opposed to an oral history. And that took longer. It
doesn't surprise me at all that it took you so long, because you cover so much. There's so much breadth and depth. Every chapter, it feels like you're dealing with 4 or 5 people, but in real depth.
Yeah, it was really great in the sense that I had a lot of access. I don't know if you could do that now. I had a lot of access, and also people's stories hadn't been they were sort of figuring out their own stories. You know what I mean? They hadn't gotten into they hadn't gotten their rap down. Like, this is my story, and now I will tell it 100 times. I remember very early on, a friend of mine's mother was Gail Sheehy, and she pretty much told me one of the only really super useful things about interviewing, which is that you sort of enlist the subject, like you're on a journey together to discover their story. Like it's like a joint project, as opposed to like the sort of adversarial, you tell me, I'm going to get this out of you. It's sort of like you're on an exploration together. And that makes it really interesting. Also, a lot of the women, you'll see, a lot of the women are, have lost a parent. And a lot of the women had been through therapy. So they were very interested in sort of like putting together the story of their life from a sort of psychological point of view.
Yeah, it seems to be a little bit of a theme that runs through the book as well, that the sort of the idea of, the more professionally successful they become, the less able they are to maintain relationships and actually sort of, or even sort of initiate them because the guys run screaming from the...
Wow, I didn't think of it like that, but I think it's always complicated when you're, it gets more easier now because people are used to being in peer marriages, but it was different back then. And I also think, it's always a complicated thing when you're dealing with when both parties are powerful. And also both parties want to work, or both parties. And a lot of times I remember one of the women saying, you said, she talked about, she's like, I love my kids. It's the husband that was the problem. The kids were never a problem. The husband was the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the examples of that sort of relationship, I guess, or one of the difficult relationships is Peter Bogdanovich and Polly Platt, and that's. Because the lines there are so blurred as to, at a certain point, you're sort of thinking, who's directing this film? And people around them are sort of thinking that as well.
Well, I think it is really complicated. I think there is sort of this image of like this heroic image as the film director with all the thoughts, and all the thoughts come out of this one person and everything is in this vision, but it's really a super collaborative process. I mean, there's so many decisions that go into being a filmmaker, to making a film. Like there's like 1,000 decisions every day. And I think one of the things is important when you're an artist is to have someone that you trust. You know what I mean? To have like a sounding board. Like I remember talking to Nora Ephron about this, and she was like, you have to find someone whose truth is your truth. Like, and she says, so like, I would never give my work to the guy who wrote Die Hard, because he just would never like it. He would never understand it. His point of view would not be useful to me. And I think Polly Platt, they're both kind of broken people, and together they were very, very powerful. And it is always sort of a mystery about who did what. I mean, I think Polly really had a very visual sense. And really, she designed all the movies, but she also designed them in a way to help where the camera was going to go. You know what I mean? She sort of like gave the canvas, but I also think bolstered his confidence but it got very contentious. I don't know if you know about this. What happened is like, I initially had done an article about Polly. That's sort of how I met her. And then she became a staple in the book, and I spent a lot of time with her. But sort of like, has Polly's reputation improved in the business, Peter's reputation declined, and he used to eventually got really, really angry about it. And he gave this interview before he died about like how this was false and she had nothing to do with it. And then his daughters got upset about that. And then there was a podcast recently about Polly, which was sort of generated by this kind of ongoing battle between them over credit. But Polly was an amazing woman. I mean, I think the thing about these women is like, now that I'm kind of more of a grown-up, like when I was doing this, I was very young. I mean, I was a grown-up, but I was very, very young. And I just realized how hard it all was, in a way that it's sort of like unfathomable. Like it's sort of, you know what I mean? You sort of begin to understand how hard it is, like to sort of, advocate your point of view, to be the only woman in the room, to sort of always get a discount and to sort of like, the whole kind of like sexualization of your being. I think that was there all the time. I think the women who survived, like the women who are in my book, generally just sort of blinders, I remember Sherry Lansing just saying it's like a speck of dirt on your shoe. You just sort of wipe it off. Not to say that they didn't see it and that it didn't happen, but they just sort of developed a strategy for deflecting, diffusing, ignoring.
Yeah, but you've got to wonder that there must be a psychic cost to that all the men around them don't have to pay that.
Yes, I think that's true. There was a psychic cost. Yeah, but also, I mean, you got to understand there's something fun about the earlier days when there are not so many rules. So there's kind of a loosey-goosey fun that was not always good. Obviously, some of it was horrible, but sort of like it wasn't so programmatic. People really were like, oh, I like this, so I'll make it. It's not like now it's very different. It's very much like the algorithm. I keep talking about that, but it's really this sense of like this general thing that everyone has to obey in some way.
I never got a feeling that I got a feeling that this was a difficult environment to live in, and they were facing incredible odds and still do face bad odds, certainly. But there was also a sense that so many of these women just faced it with such fierce individuality. And I mean, someone like Elaine May is just like a force of nature, and she's not, she's not messing about or taking any prisoners or anything.
Just like the amount of self-confidence and self-possession is really extraordinary. It just also because you have to sort of, on a daily basis, someone's telling you you're wrong or stupid. And that sort of happens in Hollywood all the time. But like as a woman, that's sort of like, and you just sort of like, no, I think that, they're tremendously, I remember talking to Jodie Foster once, and she described these women because she knew a lot of them. She knows a lot of them. A lot of them are dying. A lot of them have died since the book. But she described them as like, I'm going to get this slightly wrong. So it was like rhesus monkeys, like the most aggressive people you're ever going to meet. Like they're just going to be so aggressive. And you really do see that. It's the sort of like this drive that is incredible. And a lot of it fused. I mean, there's just so many people with like parents who have died that they're sort of like Sue Mengers and Dawn Steele and Sherry Lansing and Polly. I mean, just like almost all of them have come from single parent households. And that gives you a kind of, like if it doesn't totally break you, it gives you a ferocious quality of like wanting to have love and affection. And like, it's like a need that's sort of beyond just sort of taking over the world. It's a kind of psychological need.
The number of strategies they have as well, in terms of, everyone has their different sort of strategies and ways of doing things. And some is like, I want to be the only woman in the room. I don't want to have other women here. I want to be the Howard Hughes smart gal,
Yeah.
Not Howard Hughes. Who am I talking about? Howard Hawks. Yes, of course. Howard Hawks. Yes. The sort of angels have no wings sort of character and that kind of.
I do think that was very much a strategy in the beginning, that a lot of women were very fearful of the other women in the room. There was like, there was a queen bee syndrome. But I was listening to Adam Grant, who's this, organizer, and he's a psychologist, studies business in America. And he just talked about this recently, which is, everyone's always blaming the women for like being queen bees, but that's actually a reaction to a bigger system where they have no power. So they want to keep the tiny little power they have. It's sort of like the divide, it's sort of like blaming the women. It's like, look at the men, divide and conquer. So I think that definitely began in the 90s. It did change. I think people began to realize, we can help each other. We can be each other's allies. And also people always want to have friends. You know what I mean? No one wants to like live in a world without friends. And, usually if you're a woman, most of your friends tend to be women. Not always, but often.
And it's kind of exhausting otherwise, because you're always sort of, you've got nobody who you can let your guard down with.
Yeah, well, you have your male partners, and I mean, and a lot of the women had, if business partners, if not romantic partners. They were in a sort of they weren't sort of by themselves, like they had partners.
Yeah, there are some like really impressive stories as well of sort of allies, if for want of a better word, so Spielberg seems to come out of it quite well as sort of somebody who is encouraging and you should, Penny Marshall, you should do this, Penny, you're doing it anyway, you should direct.
Well, he's always liked women and supported women. Like Kathy Kennedy started off as his assistant, and now she runs Lucasfilms. He's always, and like he always seems to have, and his producer now, this woman, Christy McCosco Krieger, she started off as his assistant too. He likes surrounding himself with like very competent, very not neurotic women. but that's all. Yeah. I mean, I think he doesn't really see, I think you'll see a lot of the same men show up over and over again as people who support women, like James L. Brooks, Spielberg, It's like you sort of see this Geffen, you sort of see the same figures appearing as like, okay, and they're smart because the women are smart. And also, I think it's good to have, I think it's good to have multiple point of views as people are understanding now that the market can just be bigger if you include all sexes, all races, everyone.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's one of the things you make, the point you make at the very end of the book with sort of James Cameron winning the Oscars for Titanic. And it's like, well, yeah, he's a big macho, king of the world, but it's like, you just made a huge women's movie. That's why it's so big.
Yeah, I know. He does. He's another one who likes, Terminator 2. It's like Linda Hamilton. It's sort of like, you remember, obviously you remember Schwarzenegger, but she's carrying the movie through. She's the heroine. I mean, I just remember, I think it was James L. Brooks who said this. There is we were talking about broadcast news. I don't remember actually if he was talking to me exactly, but I remember reading this. Can't remember if he told me or I read it, but it's interesting to see women go through situations that they're not supposed to be in, or they don't expect to be in. Like in broadcast news, it's like, it's more unexpected if a woman does it because, no one expects it and she doesn't expect it. So everything is new. And it's just a little bit like, you can see they just did that in this movie Tar. Like they put Kate Blanchett. Like if that was a man, you're like, why am I going to watch this? But because it's a woman going through the same thing, it all seems new and different and provocative.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like her role is essentially the toxic man, but without being a man.
Yeah.
When you started doing this, then who were the first people that you were approaching, and did you get close? It sounds like talking about the advice you got. It sounds like you sort of had to get quite close to some of these women.
I got very close to Polly, and I spent a lot of time with Sherry. I mean, I think the way, because I'd done this article for Premiere, I'd met a lot of people, and so what happens in Hollywood is you get one or two people. Big people. And then everyone, when you're doing reporting in Hollywood, one of the first things people say is, who else are you talking to? So I started, very early on, Sherry came aboard and she was always incredible to me. She's nothing but fantastic. And I also became very good friends with Polly, who ended up living down the street from me. So that also, those were the two. And then there were a lot of people. A lot of people were incredibly generous, and a lot of people and sometimes I just waited people out. You know what I mean? Or I would, I waited people out. Like I remember trying to get Streisand. That was sort of like a campaign, so-and-so, you have to get people to recommend you and say this person's okay, and get people, you sort of like, or Sue Mengers, Sue Mengers was, she was difficult, but she was great. But she was like, you would show up at her house and it was, I realize now she was very depressed, but sometimes you would talk to her and she was like, and then suddenly she would sort of revive and be incredibly charming and funny. And then she, you know what I mean? But sometimes I definitely, I think as in the 90s, I think a lot of people like Sue kind of didn't like women when she was coming up. And then when she was retired, a lot of the women turned up and were her best friends and sustained her. And the same with Dawn Steele. Like Dawn Steele, was famous for I don't have any women friends. Why would I like women? They're not useful to me. And then when she died, it's like, the women who showed up and who were her pallbearers. And I think it just sort of began to happen in the 90s. Like Dawn and Sherry were always kind of pitted against each other. This is Dawn Steele and Sherry Lansing. So they were vying in public opinion to be like the first woman to run a studio. And they sort of, in actuality, they're not that different. They're like fatherless Jewish girls, but in persona, they were very different. Like Sherry is very, very polite, very warm, very her front was very feminine, like traditionally feminine. I'm saying her front. She's also incredibly watch her feet. She's like she's ferocious. Don's shtick was like, I'm going to outboy the boys. I'm going to be the crudest, the most obnoxious person I can be. And then they were, so Sherry became she became president of production at Fox in the 80s. And then Don became head of Columbia in the early 90s. But they were always pitted against each other in their psychology. And they also worked together in the 80s in Paramount. So Sherry was she was a producer on the lot, and Don was the head of production. And there's like this famous story where like Sherry gave Don the script for Fatal Attraction, and Don had just gotten married, and she literally threw it at Sherry's head. She said, "Why we do this? This is not man cheats." And it's just sort of like it was funny. It was funny. But afterwards, after they went, they were like frenemies. They had to work together. Like Dawn had this very insane baby shower. She had the first power shower in the world where it's like, she had all the women and like she wanted to have all the men that she had slept with. And they like had just crazy. And Barbra Streisand and like sang the music for it. It was like a power shower. And I guess someone was describing, Dawn is just being, her videos, like all the men she slept with, saying outrageous things. And Sherry's like, everyone was so surprised that Sherry was there laughing away. But and then later on, Dawn and Sherry became incredibly close friends, just really, really close friends.
It's so interesting, that chapter that you write about Fatal Attraction, because there's a real debate about that. And I didn't know that whole thing about the ending changing and being initially sort of like there was an argument that it was kind of even-handed, and, Glenn Close was as sympathetic as Michael Douglas. And then by the end, it was sort of like kill the femme fatale,
They're remaking all of these movies now. They're doing a TV series of it. And I think that one's a very interesting one because, after it was a huge sensation, and after it came out, Susan Faludi did her book, Backlash, was brilliant in sort of analyzing how the script had changed. And that's actually a very common thing that happens in Hollywood, is like the scripts change. And like it used to be the female character gets smaller and the male character gets more heroic. But, and that's totally true. But at the end of the day, in Fatal Attraction, what you're remembering is Glenn Close. That's the thrill of the movie, is her being, her being murderous, her being this kind of villain and just wanting what she wants. And she gets punished in the end, but she wants what she wants. And so there's it's a kind of complicated message, because I do think that's sort of why people like the movie, because it's big and she's explosive, but she was punished at the end. So all this, it's like it has two things that are true at the same time.
Yeah. It just reminds me of an old-fashioned sort of femme fatale thing, that they're usually the most interesting person in the film, but at the same time, they're going to go to hell. They're not.
Yeah.
But that's where you put female desire in the 1940s and the 1980s, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. And that movie really did come out of Sherry Lansing's id. That was sort of like, it's like she really like related to that. And I do think this is one of the things that's interesting, is a lot of times in the movies that they made, you sort of see these women's ids kind of come out, what they're interested in. I mean, they go through the Hollywood system. They get, it's the same thing with Flashdance. People think Flashdance is not the most feminist movie in the whole world. But, when I was 18, I loved it. And, people love the music. I mean, it's sort of like all these things, they have mixed messages. So
you're kind of receiving them in a very innocent way as well. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so I was receiving all of these films as just finished products. I wasn't thinking of the development or evolution of the ideas, and it was just sort of like, oh wow, that's what always would have happened in that story. Not it could have gone this way, it could have gone that way, you know.
Totally. You sort of accept what they tell you without thinking too deeply about it. And sort of, you know, you want something that makes you feel something. You want to have an emotional response.
Yeah, that's often that's I think behind all this idea that, you know, oh, you've ruined my childhood by doing X, Y, or Z to the remake. But it's just like, no, if you go back to those movies and watch them again, you know, you'll probably look at them in a different way anyway.
Yes, that's true. It's the same with don't meet your heroes because they'll be disappointing.
I mean, one of my heroes in this book, who I did feel slightly disappointed with, was going back to Elaine May, because I love her movies. I love Mickey and Nicky and A New Leaf, and I even love Ishtar. I think Ishtar's a brilliant, very funny film. But yeah, the making of all those movies and Elaine May. I mean, you have somebody say that she puts back the case for female directors a decade because she's just so impossible to deal with.
I think some of the stuff I think that's all true, but there's also a level of sexism about it all. You know what I mean? And that's changed. I mean, I was sort of, that's the problem, is like, people, men and women, can be difficult, and film directors usually have some kind of fierce, stick to your own guns, because everyone's going to tell you, it's like when you're an artist, you really don't have anything except this is my point of view, and I think it's right, and I think it's going to be good. There's no like, it's going to sell 20 widgets and don't worry about it. It's basically I think that Elaine May was nutty, but she was also living in a time when people wanted to minimize her. But she did have a lot of support. She had a lot of friends, and she had a lot of artists who believed in her and supported her. So, I mean, the thing is, it's sort of like you see about Streisand, like, she can be very demanding, but she was also in a time when people didn't want women to direct. I mean, she's a movie star and a great...
Explaining football to the friend who's just there for the nachos? Hard. Tailgating from home like a pro with snacks and drinks everyone will love? An easy win. And with Instacart helping deliver the snack time MVPs to your door, you're ready for the game in as fast as 30 minutes. So you never miss a play or lose your seat on the couch or have to go head-to-head for the last chicken wing. Shop Game Day Faves on Instacart and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 grocery orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Other fees and terms apply.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Star, so that sort of changes everything, like changes how everyone behaves. But there's also like, and I think that, so both things can be true. They can be difficult, and they can also be facing kind of a level of discouragement from the environment.
And I think the thing I've always thought about Ishtar is like, how many male directors have flops which are equivalent, but Scorsese had a bunch of flops, and he's carried on, even Spielberg with 1941, but he comes back with something else, and it's not like you don't go to director heaven quite so quickly if you're a bloke.
No, you don't. But I think some of it gets, you don't get sent to director jail so quickly. But I think it is also just very like failure on a big screen, failure in a big way where everyone's seeing you fail. I think it's really hard to come back. I mean, I think it's just a really challenging, it's just hard. It's brutally hard on your psyche. And, you have to be a very strong person to like, I'm going to get on the horse again.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the characters, it's a real person, of course, but
I feel like the characters too.
But it feels like one of those, a sort of Russian novel in some ways, that you're just a cast of thousands. And it is Jodie Foster, she's sort of coming through the system as a child actor. And then she wants to direct, but this whole horrific thing about the guy who shot Reagan,
I know.
It's just unbelievable. And she had conversations with him on the phone and was like, I
know, you can't. It's like the life, you can't really believe it's one person's life. It's so crazy and so, I think she's another one who's incredibly strong. I think she's very good at drawing boundaries. That experience makes you draw boundaries, very strict boundaries. And like, she's also like super, she grew up, you can tell that she had been a child actress because she's very like, cross your T's, dot your I's, don't be pretentious, don't be a narcissist. Like when she's on the set, she's one of the crew. She's very aware of like, she's aware of where the actor, I don't know if you've ever met other child actors, but there's a part of them that still has a little bit of like, I was a child actor, I'm going to sing for my supper. It doesn't always come through, but I've noticed some other ones that it's a little, it's some old part of their personalities, but she's a brilliant woman. And she is,
It's just like the muscle memory is already formed, and no matter how old they grow, they can't get out of that. It slips back in.
Yeah. And they also want to, and it's hard. I mean, who has a career that long? Like seriously, who has a career from 5 to almost 60, like pretty much straight through? I mean, that's a kind of an incredible achievement. And and there wasn't always, before The Accused, it wasn't totally not clear she was going to make it to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was a really interesting point that first of all, people have sort of think her career is in the doldrums and it's maybe fatally gone. And then the difficulty she has in getting that part and the horrendous sexism of some of the men who say she's not rapeable enough for the role.
I know, it's outrageous, isn't it? It's pretty outrageous. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that you had a very powerful female producer coming off a giant hit to kind of like, they're very, I mean, Sherry's very, very fierce. Like she has, her persona was very pleasant and cheery, but she, she'll just, keep going for what she wants.
And it's also that situation, I think, of I watched Looking for Mr. Goodbar recently, the Diane Keaton.
Oh, really? How does
film.
that hold up?
Oh, it's tough. It's a really tough watch. But I think it deserves a sort of being rediscovered. I think it sort of disappeared from the conversation. I think it has a lot of very interesting things to say. I mean, it's obviously dated, but in a way, it's like exactly what you said earlier. In a way, it's a film that really takes female sexuality very seriously, and at the same time punishes the woman for having that sexuality, or at least in this misogynistic society she lives in. So I would go to bat for it, to tell you the truth. I think and her performance is amazing.
Yeah, I would like to see that.
And it's got a Richard Gere and who else is in it who's very young? Tom Berenger.
Yeah,
has a very, and it's all, and even that bit, in terms of the murder, it's all about sexuality, because he's someone who wants to deny being gay. He's pushing against that, which is, it's a it's a dark film. I would.
Yeah.
But I was thinking of that in terms of the accused as well, of the sort of reluctance of people. They don't want to approach the subject matter, and even in terms of sort of actresses, don't want to put themselves in that situation for genuine reasons, for valid reasons.
Yeah, I mean, people. That's still hard for people to accept. Like, you don't. Victims aren't going to be perfect victims. They're going to be flawed individuals. And that doesn't mean that they haven't been victimized. And I think it's a constant. It's old as, it never totally goes away. And it's not like, Hollywood actresses. Yeah. I mean, I think also Jodie Foster is just really, really smart. I mean, a lot of these careers that survive for a long time, I mean, some of it is luck and like what you get offered, but also some of it is like picking parts that will allow you to shine that are not necessarily the most obvious things. Because, if you're Leonardo DiCaprio, you're going to get all the best parts, or whoever is the person of the moment. It's sort of like when you're trying to get there, it depends on who you meet and who you like. She's a very, very smart woman. And also, like, you wonder, and also she knows what it's like to be victimized. I mean, she'd been through that. And so you wonder, like, that wasn't, she'd been through that with Taxi Driver. She'd been through that with Hinckley. She'd been through that kind of metaphoric, well, it wasn't metaphoric, but I'm saying it's like she had things she could tap into.
But just even the process of having to film that scene, there's a bit in the book where you talk about it taking a week, and every night she goes out to nightclub to dance because she has to it's almost like an act of defiance.
Yeah.
Just a stunning sort of context to the whole process. It made me really want to go back and watch the film as well. It may sound like an odd thing to say, but to sort of rediscover, because again, I think The Accused is a film that's slightly, I don't know, just with the wealth of stuff that happens, that certain films, for no fault of their own, just sink a little bit below the waterline.
Yes. Sometimes, yes, exactly. Well, it's a tough film. It's not going to make you feel good at the end. So it's interesting what movies survive. It sort of tells you what is like the zeitgeist of the moment. Like why things are popular. Like, why are they bringing, they're basically remaking the entire 1980s catalog at Paramount, like, American Gigolo and Fatal Attraction. And it's sort of like, but now they're totally, it's a different cultural climate. It's a different, the sexual mores have all changed. It's it's interesting. I don't know if they're just doing it because Hollywood's obsessed with IP and it seems safe to do IP over and over and over again, but they lose their, they sort of take their, it seems a lot of times they take the idea and then completely miss the point of the movie, or if they redo it, they don't understand what the point was.
Yeah, or they slavishly reproduce a sort of the Top Gun like remake where it seems to have that beat of the original film in every, it
was like being in an 80s movie again. It was so crazy. It was like, wow. And I guess people just really like the feeling of the 80s, and it's fun and it's happy.
yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, a lot of people, I watched the screening in Cannes of Top Gun Maverick, and the guy behind me had already seen it twice, and I was like, "What? How the hell did she see it twice? He'd seen a press screening in London before Cannes or something." And it was a complete fanboy. He just loved it already, and it was like I was kind of saying, well, for me, Top Gun was one of those films. And I think this is true of a lot of 80s films. They're sort of movies for people who don't necessarily want to go to the movies.
What does that mean?
Well, sort of like my brother would never go to the cinema, but he'd go to the cinema to see Top Gun because it would be almost like a sporting thing. It'd be like, airplanes,
Yeah. Well, there is. I think that's why event movies are going to survive, because people want things that feel really, 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 really big that they can enjoy with other people.
So as you go through to the 90s, and you're having, and things are changing, and you're kind of observing part of this sort of a ground zero, really. After you finish the book, when you're looking ahead, I mean, pre-Me Too and everything, how are you seeing things develop in terms of women's position in the industry?
Well, since the book came out, I mean, I think it's gotten much better in the sense that there are a lot of there are tons of executives who are women. There just are a ton. I mean, when you look at the statistics, I looked at that before. I mean, what do they have? And 12% of women film directors in 2021. And that's not that much better. It was like 5% or 7%. So that's not so good. I mean, TV's definitely gone to be about 30% of the behind the scenes is women. And that is significantly better. But films are sort of, it's just like, I think part of the problem is like the kind, you know what I mean? There are just many, many less films being made, just dramatically less films being made. And so each one is, part of IP. And what's interesting, I was looking up at I was trying to figure out the production, the administration chart of Paramount. This was just the other day. So now you have Sherry Redstone, who inherited, but then it's still like a bunch of white guys. I mean, you really like maybe one or two brown faces, one or two female faces. And I sort of feel like above a certain level, it's still kind of all guys. I mean, it's definitely, you have women in very powerful positions, but not at the David Zaslav, Ted Sarandos, not that position, except for Sherry Redstone, who inherited it. So, but I do think one of the things that has changed is like, it's much more like you would never do a movie that had no female characters, no female, you know what I mean? It's sort of like they would just never make a movie like that now. It would seem weird to have a movie that's just, they do, obviously they do, but people are very cognizant. It's like, oh, we have to have some kind of gender and diversity. They're sort of aware that that's good business. It's not necessarily good politics, good business.
Yeah, I mean, I think that feels like, I mean, I've got two daughters and they watch a lot of movies with me and everything. And it feels like, well, one example was like Game of Thrones. During the course of the run of that show, the way people were watching it and criticizing it changed radically. The first season, people were like, "Oh, great, okay, fantasy, woohoo!" And by the end of it was like, "We don't want that showing. We don't want this. We're against this. That's a cliche. That's a trope." And it became so critical. And I was thinking, guys, go back and watch the first season. It was never that great in terms of it.
No, times have definitely changed. It's very, very. I mean, and that's sort of what the thing about Me Too that's fascinating to me is that it's sort of obviously it made things. A lot of bad things came out, but I think it also, for some reason, it just didn't stay in like the lane of bad men behaving badly. It sort of moved into like, oh, let's get the pictures better. Let's hire more people. It's sort of like one of those sort of watershed moments where change accelerated in every way. I mean, as I say, you see it mostly in TV. That moves faster, and you can have a show with like, a writing staff where it used to be all men. Now you can have the show and it's half women and people of color. I mean, that moves faster, but that's definitely moved. And and for some reason, like the reckoning about Me Too, like that turbocharged everything. I mean, maybe it would have happened otherwise. I don't know, but it definitely is like, it's a turning point.
And I mean, like in terms as well of sort of like working environment, just the atmosphere of, someone like Scott Rudin or is it Scott Rudin who was accused of sort of bullying, toxic sort of environment and what? And And I mean, I read all those Peter Biskin books where people were throwing things around. I mean, it was like it was documented. It wasn't like, oh, really?
Yeah.
It was like,
yeah.
But in a way, that's great that we're questioning why does that really make a film better if the guy at the back is terrorizing his staff?
Yeah. No, I mean, it does. It's changed. It's changed a lot of things that I didn't expect it to change. It's interesting because all the women that I wrote about, they just endured, you know what I mean? They just endured, or, some of them left the business, but the ones who are in the book, they endured, or they turned it on its, they persisted, they ignored, they just dealt with it.
I mean, it's a sort of thought experiment, I guess, but I just wonder what those same women would have done if the environment had been less hostile and they had been, allowed more the power. I mean, there's a moment in your book where you talk about, I think it's Sherry Lansing, who she is made a head of production, but there's a guy who's kind of got, even technically should be beneath her, but he's actually countermanding all her stuff and she doesn't have the power.
That was like just a terrible mind fuck. Like, she was brought in to be head of production and she was touted, oh, we're so modern, we're so great. And then she's never given real power. And that happens a lot in Hollywood. That's a very, but that was particularly toxic.
Yeah, let's sort of kick somebody upstairs rather than...
Yeah. Well, there's always this theory that, women get the top job when things are going badly. And then they're, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's, I think, probably from 10 years ago, but...
Have you ever thought of doing a follow-up book or updating the edition, append a sort of epilogue and...
Yeah.
Or just a sequel, or a sequel even.
Sequel. It's very emotionally exhausting to do these books. I mean, when you talk, you do, it's sort of like you're maintaining relationships with people over a long period of time. And even if you really like them, it's not like you're not their friend. I mean, maybe afterwards you can be their friend and you're honest, but there's always like the thing that's hanging over. And it's just like, I'm not that cold a person. I mean, so maybe I wouldn't be Janet Malcolm, but, I get wound up about the people and what's going on. And it's just an emotional minefield to keep going on it.
How did they react when the book came out?
Most of them were thrilled, except I had little children and I was there. It was like a Saturday and I was there with my husband, and my husband picks up the phone. It was landline, so picks up the phone and he's like, yes. And then he hands me the phone. I'm like, who is it? He says, I think it's Barbra Streisand. And she began just like crazy yelling at me, like she was upset. And I was just like, look, I was just saying, like, read it. I really think you're overreacting. I really, really think you're overreacting. But it was, it was a story.
Barbra Streisand overreacting. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe that's ever happened.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I think she would. I've been thinking about her because I was thinking about A Star Is Born and how she had wanted to direct it herself, and then how like John Peters had sort of like she had a very complicated relationship with her own ambition. Then it's sort of like she wanted John to do it. She was through John, and John was using her, and she wasn't confident enough to do it herself. But she wanted to, pick and arrange I just think it's sort of like you're thinking on one hand you see it as like a woman driving people crazy. Other hand you see it as like a great artist who doesn't have the confidence to direct herself, so it's all kind of leaking out in this other way. I mean, it's sort of like, but she also is very demanding, like all the story. I mean, but I think the thing about Streisand is people genuinely like her. So she has real friends. So you sort of feel like, okay, she can be difficult, but she has real friends. Some of these people are difficult and don't have real friends. And those are the people you should be wary of.
I had a friend once who met Nina Simone. He was working as a waiter in a Swiss hotel, and Nina Simone was there, and he went up to her and said, "Oh, Miss Simone, you such wonderful music. I have to thank you. You've given such joy to my life." And she turned around and said, "Just get me my fucking coffee." And the thing is, he tells that as like, as he's so happy about it, because of course Nina Simone said that. Of course she did. What were you expecting?
Yeah. I mean, you're a great artist.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's such a fantastic read. I'm so pleased. It really, and the other thing that I think, I referred earlier to the Biskin books about, the Easy Riders and Raging Bulls and Down and Dirty Pictures and that. They're great reads and all the rest of it, but you could read those books and just think it's a boys' club and just think there's no women around except actresses, and they just don't sort of have much of a role. And reading your book is a real corrective to that, because there are, and they're behind some of the big films.
Yes, it's a corrective, but his are also true, especially Easy Riders, Ratings from Bulls. I mean, the problem about the second book is like doesn't have Harvey's sexual predatory nature. And so you sort of feel like what's actually going on. It's sort of a nightmare. Like it's like the journalist's nightmare that you have either missed something big and you always live in fear of that, because totally could happen. Because it wasn't like that. That wasn't like a story. Everyone assumes like everybody knew. And you sort of kind of like, you knew, I mean, I had like only one dealing with Harvey my whole life. But you kind of knew in the sense of like, I thought maybe prostitutes. That's what I thought. I did not think, and that's just me being naive. But no, I do think women, no one wants to live in a world where there are no, we all want to live in a world where there are men and women. It's just more interesting world, more accurate world. And I do think the book, I think this is the reason why the book still resonates, is because it's very hard when you think, like you look at scenarios and there are no women there and you're like, how could I possibly like go into politics or go into business or it's sort of like, and in Hollywood it's always been, before it's become so codified, it just was a little bit more like he was a shoe salesman and then he became a movie director. I mean, there's always been a little bit, until recently, more fluidity of like the way people got in the business and that. And also, the other thing is, as development became more important, a lot of women read and were willing to read. And that was an avenue. I mean, they don't even call them D-girls anymore. But when I came to Hollywood, they called them D-girls. Now you would say that's totally sexist. But that's the way a lot of women got into the business. It's like they were close to material. They could manage material. They could, you know what I mean? And that was sort of an avenue that people got in.
The good argument for the Bechdel test is the world passes the Bechdel test, so movies should pass the Bechdel test.
Definitely. Definitely. It's funny.
It's not an outrageous proposition, is it? Rachel, thank you so much. I'd love one last question, which is,
yes.
Have you got a book that you can recommend for our listeners?
I do. You probably have already done this book, but I love this book, which is the Big Goodbye: Chinatown in the Last Years of Hollywood.
Oh, Sam Wasson.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best books ever about Hollywood, and it really, I learned so much about it, and it really it's very hard to kind of capture the creative process, and I thought that really got into it. And also, I mean, I don't know if you've read the book, but just the fact that Robert Towne had a collaborator. He worked with this guy who was basically a co-writer and who's been totally written out of history. And you're like, wow, that's crazy. That's totally crazy.
Especially because Robert Towne is like one of the, like William Goldman is like the screenwriter god. And it's like, hang on a minute, totally. You just did half of it?
Yes. Yeah. It's shocking.
It's like Muhammad Ali had another guy in the ring hitting the guy.
I know, it's so crazy. And you realize like so much of Hollywood is like myth making, like personal myth making, like I'm the genius, like the way, and like that's sort of the Peter Bogdanovich Polly stories. Like he was like, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius, I'm a genius. Wait a minute, all my movies fail when I dump my wife. Maybe there was other people involved.
And guess who? Absolutely. And so Sam was on the podcast last year, I think, and he's going to be our guest. So when we're recording this, he's going to be the guest before this episode. So it's good.
Oh, it's because he has a new book,
yes,
right?
He's just done a book called Hollywood and Oral History, co-authored with a woman, would you believe? His very own Polly Platt. No, it's Janine Basinger.
Oh, she's fantastic.
Yes, she's amazing. The Star Machine, what a wonderful book that is.
Yeah, she's an amazing woman also. No, I think he's really, really excellent. I also like this book called Competing with Idiots. Have you read that one?
No.
About, it's great. It's written by this guy, Nick Davis, who's the grandson of Herman Mankiewicz.
Oh, right.
And it's kind of grandson of Herman Mankiewicz, grandnephew of Joseph Mankiewicz, but it really is very psychological, really it's just a great psychological portrait of these two men. And that was good.
Ever since I've started doing this podcast, I've read so many great books about film, but I think there's a little bit of a renaissance going on at the moment. I think there is some great writers writing some great history and great biography and great criticism. So I've been very fortunate in that. But and Rachel, I really hope I'd love to see another take on the industry from you as well, if it's not too psychically costly.
Well, no, I mean, just have to get myself to do it.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Okay, take care. Thanks again. Bye.
So that was my conversation with Rachel. Her recommended book was The Big Goodbye, The Making of Chinatown by Sam Wasson, who was on the podcast 2 episodes ago. So you can go back and listen to that. He's also on the podcast talking about The Big Goodbye. He was talking about the Hollywood and Oral History just recently. And now he was talking about, you get it. So basically there are 2 episodes with Sam, the most recent with a Hollywood and oral history being discussed, and one from about a year ago in which we talk about his Chinatown book. And I want to talk to him about his Blake Edwards book at some point in the future. So me and Sam will definitely be getting together like Freebie and the Bean. I also want to point out, I mentioned my brother liking Top Gun. I very much meant my brother of the 1980s more recently. I'm sure he's become much more of a film watcher and a film lover, and I'm saying this of course because he also listens to this podcast, and I don't want him to think that I am lumping him in as some sort of guy who only watches films if they've got fast aeroplanes in. I'm thinking back to the 1980s. So yeah, and hi Fran, if you are listening. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you to Elliot Atkins, as ever, for providing the music, Ali Howard for providing art and encouragement, and thanks to you, listeners. Kai is a particularly exceptional and enthusiastic listener. Andy English also. Always encouraging, always great to see those retweets and those tweets. Loads of people, Ian Killick. I shouldn't start naming them because otherwise I'll offend people who don't get mentioned. But loads of people who really, honestly, without their encouragement, well, I would still do it, but I would feel sadder while I was doing it. Okay, so that's enough from me. Hopefully, I'll see you next week.
Cue the fireplace and your favorite fall movie. There's nothing better than a cozy evening at home with a glass of First Leaf wine. First Leaf is a personalized wine club that delivers right to your door. Sounds magical, right? They get to know your favorite tasting notes, which varietals you enjoy, and whether you prefer sweet or dry wines. So in every shipment, you get bottles tailored to your unique palate. Go to tryfirstleaf.com/fall to get your first 6 months for just $44.95 with free shipping.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.